Welcome to the last part of the Summoner's Guide for Divinity Original Sin 2. And now we can talk about the fun part. It's time for our combos. Zero source point combos are our first category. They are our basic toolkit and can be cast at any time when our skills are off cooldown. Fire Trap into Summon Trigger Pad into Supercharger. Optional spells, Flaming Crescendo, Death Wish. This is one of the earliest available bursts. In Act 1, it's absolutely destroying things, but it stays a solid damaging attack throughout the game. Use your Fire Trap on a non-fire surface, summon your Oily Blob or a Bloated Corpse or Fire Incarnate or Wind Up Toy or Dragonling, supercharge your summon and place its attack over the Fire Trap. If you use a Wind Up Toy or Bloated Corpse, you could add Flaming Crescendo to it, but in my opinion it's not worth casting. You can add Death Wish if you can move your pet over a fire surface or move to and then away from an enemy for an opportunity attack to damage it before attacking the trap, but be careful not to kill it. If your Fire Trap explosion left behind a fire surface, you can let other party members extend this combo by throwing fire traps on the fire surface from the original trap explosion, as long as the pet creator of the surface is still alive. If this is the case, any additional fire traps from other characters will explode in the same way as the first by using the supercharged pet stats, making it extremely powerful to just add more traps to that. If an enemy overrides the area by adding another piece of fire to the surface, or the pet that created the fire died already, it will not work. This is a situational thing that you can utilize to add more traps to the fire if the combat flow is in your favor. Corpse Explosion into Supercharger. This is one of the simplest combos, but it's still effective. It's a good follow-up combo after the Fire Trap combo, because Supercharger is on cooldown for 2 rounds, and you can use that on the created corpse from a Fire Trap combo kill, while waiting for Throw Explosive Trap to go off cooldown again. Summon Pet into Enrage into Supercharger. Optional spells, Death Wish. Use a summon with a strong auto attack. This will be most likely your fully buffed Blood Incarnate, which is already on the field, or a Bone Widow. Basically, you want to use Enrage and Supercharger on your pet and let it auto-attack as often as it can. It's possible to use a Bone Widow as a quick summon, but it will only have 4 action points then. Depending on the positioning of your summon, it might be necessary to use a movement or teleport spell to bring you to your summon to enrage it, because of its short range, or to teleport the summon directly onto an enemy to save action points from the summon. If the summon is already wounded, you can use Death Wish on it to further enhance its damage. This combo is more complicated to pull off than the Fire Trap one because of all the movement required to get a full attack sequence, but sometimes it can be worthwhile to pull it off. More often than not, it's too much of a hassle to make it work. It's useful to have if the first 2 combos are not possible currently. Rain into Summon Incarnate, into Electric Infusion, into Summon Elemental Totems. This is a combo which can be used to completely control the battlefield. You need to prepare the battlefield before with multiple casts of Rain. If you are done and every enemy is standing in water, you can summon your Incarnate, buff it up, and give him Electric Infusion. Go with the Incarnate to a safe spot where he doesn't get killed instantly and open the fight with a Lightning Bolt. Target the feet of your enemy. The ground will now be electrified. Summon a new totem on the electrified water every turn with every character when possible, so the ground keeps getting re-electrified. The more characters join in doing this, the more effective it gets, up to a point where big groups of enemies are permanently stun-locked. Running a hybrid Arrow Surge build helps as well. Rain into Totems. This is a simple support combo for a Frost Mage hybrid. If you cast Rain on the battlefield and then create water totems, they will apply wet to the enemies continuously, which allows you to freeze every single enemy with only 1 cast from your Frost spells. Infusion cycling. This technique switches the elemental infusion from your Incarnate every turn to have a new strong attack available after the last one is on cooldown. For this to work, you have to memorize Fire Infusion, Poison Infusion, and Electric Infusion. Best to start with an Earth Infusion by summoning your Incarnate over an Earth surface. You will get Fossil Strike as your first range area attack. After it is on cooldown on the next turn, use Fire Infusion and let your Incarnate cast Fireball, followed by Poison and then Electricity. It's not as powerful as boss combos utilizing Supercharger. But if you want to keep using your fully buffed Incarnate and not sacrifice him, and want him to do more damage, you can use that method. Shackles of Pain into Guardian Angel. This combo will give you multiple turns of minimal enemy attention, up to the point where the enemies are doing absolutely nothing. You need one enemy without physical armor, so it's good to use a Blood Incarnate or a Bone Widow for that. Cast Shackles of Pain on the enemy and don't attack him anymore. After that, cast Guardian Angel while standing near your pet. Now just keep doing your stuff undisrupted for 3 turns. Works very well with the Electric Surface combo. Cast Electric Infusion on your Incarnate, let him electrify the ground and start summoning totems near you while being protected from the Shackles and Guardian Angel spells. By the time the protection ends, you already have prepared your swarm of stunning totems. The next category is about our one source point combos. This type of combos allows you to recover the used point immediately with source vampirism after you killed a target. This can be useful if the enemies are far too spread out to justify spending your big finisher, but you still have a great opportunity to make a devastating strike. Of course, these are also useful when you are still in an early game and don't have all the source points yet. Summon Artillery Plant into Enrage, into Haste, into Supercharger. This is a source variant from our Blood Incarnate or Bone Spider plus Enrage combo. Since the flower has a very strong 3 action point slam attack, it's viable to not go for a 6 action point burst, but to use her 5 action point burst instead. By using Haste on her, she can make her combo viable directly after the turn you have summoned her. You don't have to wait for 6 accumulated action points. Fire Incarnate into Supercharger into Master of Sparks. For this combo, you can either way use a freshly summoned Fire Incarnate or you use an already existing one. If you take the one that's already on the field, you want to make sure that his Whirlwind and his Bull Rush skills are both off cooldown, and it's best to make him invisible before starting the combo, so he will not get crowd controlled after you buff him up and before he can take its turn. This combo gets exponentially stronger the more enemies you can hit. Hitting up to 3 enemies will not do much in terms of damage, but it gets really powerful if you can hit more targets than that. Basically, you buff your Incarnate with Master of Sparks and Supercharger and dash through as many enemies as possible into a good position for your Whirlwind Strike. Every hit of those 2 attacks will create a spark that can jump to every enemy nearby, but the sparks will not damage the enemies which they originated from. Summon Trigger Pad into Supercharger into Deploy Mass Traps. Optional Death Wish. This is the stronger variant of your basic no source fire trap combo. It's executed in exactly the same way, but the mass traps cost 3 points to cast, so it's beneficial to make use of elemental affinity for this. Like in the no source variant, you can use other party members' fire traps or mass fire traps to create more supercharged powered explosions after the initial combo if the fire surface has not been overwritten and the pet is still alive. Fire Snail into Supercharger into Fire Trap. Optional Death Wish. This variant of your no source basic fire trap combo uses the cheap Fire Snail summon as a trigger. It has the advantage of having a cost of only 1 action point, access to one of the strongest no-source pet attacks with its laser ray, don't putting your Incarnate on cooldown, and having a high pyromancy skill which amplifies the trap combo. It does not do the same damage as your Deploy Mass Trap combo, which costs only 1 source point as well, but it fits perfectly into your cooldown lineup. If you want to create a 1 source point burst every 2 turns, you can do that by alternating between the Deploy Mass Trap combo, the Master of Sparks combo, and the Fire Snail combo. Supercharger and Source Cannibalism have a cooldown of 2 turns, making them accessible every other round for your next combo. If you are not having access to Apotheosis yet and have a lot of enemies in close quarter, You can combine this with the Master of Sparks combo to create a devastating early mid-game 2 source points combo. After placing the trap, summon the snail into a position from where you can draw a line through your enemies. Then you have to cast Haste and Master of Sparks on the snail. You have to use your laser first to detonate the traps. If you bile rush into your traps, they will not profit from your pyromancy skill. Then dash through your enemies in a line to trigger the sparks for every enemy hit. Incarnate into Smoke Cover into Bless. If you don't want to use burst combos to kill everything and like a more careful approach, you can create a blessed smoke cloud and hide your pets and yourself in the smoke after doing their action. If you have the pawn, you can save yourself the action point cost for moving in and out, but your pet cannot. This is a great way to keep you and your pet alive for multiple turns. Apotheosis Combos. Apotheosis Combos are your big plays. If you have your enemies where you want them to be and everything hits, these will end your fights. If you don't have access to Apotheosis yet, you could reduce the combos here to 2 or 3 point variants, but most of the time at this point in the game, your one source combos will be enough. Before you start an Apotheosis sequence, make sure that you have full action points. If you want to use your Incarnate in an Apotheosis combo, use its Chameleon Cloak ability 1 to 2 turns beforehand so it doesn't get crowd controlled before it can make its move. These combos are made from a normal 4 action point build perspective without time warp or flash sacrifice. You can extend these even further if you have a glass cannon or lone wolf build or an elf or Thane or an undead wearing a mask of the shapeshifter. Totems of the Necromancer combo. Apotheosis into Totems of the Necromancer, into Skin Graft, into Totems of the Necromancer, into Door to Eternity. You prepare for this combo by creating blood pools, and if you want to cast Venomous Aura, poison pools for elemental affinity. After gathering all enemies, dead or alive, start with Apotheosis and keep enough action points so you have 6 on your following turn. On your second turn, go to a blood pool and cast Totems of the Necromancer, then Skin Graft and Totems of the Necromancer again, and finish with Door to Eternity. This base combo will only cost you 2 action points on your first turn for Apotheosis and 6 action points on your second turn. Even in its base form, this will create 2 unkillable totems per enemy or corpse in the area for 3 turns that will do around 600 damage per shot at summoning 10 and level 20. On most fights, you will easily have 5 or more targets or corpses around you, resulting in 10 plus totems. There are a lot of ways you can spice things up from here. The most obvious additions are casting Venomous Aura during your first or second turn, or casting Firebrand during the second turn. Venomous Aura will increase the damage of your totems by roughly 50% and Firebrand by another 25%, considering a summoner with summoning 10 and no relevant points in Geomancy or Pyromancy. Venomous Aura will heal undead enemies even if they have decaying status, and Firebrand has a really small radius, so they are only situational useful. But if they work very well. Since you are already casting Door to Eternity to make all your totems invulnerable, it's an obvious choice to summon a new pet if you have none left over before casting Door to Eternity. So your poisonous totem army is getting support from an unkillable laser snail or flower or bone widow. Alternatively, if you have a fully buffed Incarnate on the field, you can just use Cursed Infusion cycling to give him 1 strong attack per round, and because you are already finished with the Necromancer combo in turn 2, you can follow up into a Sparkmaster Necrofire combo in turn 3 by casting Haste and Master of Sparks on it. But if you do that, you have to save up its dash and Whirlwind. You can even extend your Apotheosis combo beyond the 3 turns, by using a Cursed Incarnate beforehand and then using a Source Vampirism on him in turn 4 and throwing Mass Deploy traps on the fire surface that the Fire Incarnate created before he dies from Supercharger. Normally, it's a very good idea to cast Blessed Smoke Cover for 1 action point during Apotheosis, so you will not be disrupted by enemies during the 3 turns. Sadly, the enemy AI will try to seek cover from the totem, so it's better not to use invisibility fields here, otherwise you end up protecting your enemies from your totems. Another nice thing you can do to add some flavor to your totem swarm is waiting 1 to 2 turns for your enemies to try to kill your totems, which they can't because they are invincible, but they will stand there at 1 HP, which makes them an optimal target for the Equalize spell. The more totems at 1 HP are standing right next to an enemy, the lower you can get the health percent of that enemy. Another very powerful follow-up you can do as a master of a totem army is building around casting Thick of the Fight. This follow-up is a very action point heavy combo, so it's not really made for your 4-point builds, but it works awesome on everything Lone Wolf or even Glass Cannon. To make this viable, we need a character who is already built to work as a hybrid caster or archer. Basically, you will need a bit of crit rate through items, everything over 30% works fine here, and every point you have additionally in your damage affecting skills will help a lot. This combo finisher makes use of the 10 plus totems and the remaining enemies that are staying around in turn 3. You walk to the most crowded space between the totems, cast Thick of the Fight and optionally Inner Demon to give you a heavy damage multiplier, and then start slinging damage abilities for 1 to 2 turns with crazy enhanced spellcasting powers that matches the scaling of a specialized damage build in that school. This works very well with Blood Mage style of casting simply because of the fact that you will need Necromancy 5 anyways, and you have already created blood pools for elemental affinity to cast the totems of the Necromancer combos. Following this with a Blood Rain and Grasp of the Staff combo is just incredibly convenient. Aside from that, hybrid Aeromancers with Lightning Storm and Superconductor, Geomancers with their Pyroclastic Eruptions, and Archer builds with the wings from Polymorph, which allow them to position themselves in a way that all 16 shots from Arrow Spray can hit a single target, work very well here. The Archer variant will synergize very well with Venomous Aura and Firebrand because they are not only buffing your totems but also your multi-arrow attacks. With Enrage, you could even skip building into crit here because you don't need your bow outside of this burst window. Cursed Infusion Cycling. This is a source version of the general infusion cycling technique. This in itself is not the strongest of your Apotheosis combos, but it's very cheap to perform. During Apotheosis, you cast Acid Infusion, Cursed Electric Infusion, or Necrofire Infusion once per turn, so that your pet can cast its source skill directly after you. If you don't cast Supercharger, you don't have to resummon your pet or any other fancy stuff is going on. This will only cost you 1 action point per turn. The downside is that you will need a lot of memory for having all 3 Cursed Infusions learned, and that you cannot kill your pet with Supercharger for a stronger source skill before the 3rd round if you want to cast all 3 infusions without resummoning or rebuffing. So in general, it doesn't work well with our trap combos, which are our strongest combos in the game. But even if you don't play an action point heavy build like Lone Wolf or Glass Cannon, it's cheap enough to include it in our Totems of the Necromancer combo. Summon Incarnate into Master of Sparks and to Mass Deploy Traps combo. This is a combo when you want to squeeze out everything from a single Incarnate. You need a fully buffed, invisible Incarnate ready to be used in Apotheosis. On the 2nd Apotheosis turn, you will buff your Incarnate with Master of Sparks and Necrofire Infusion and Supercharger. Like in the 1 source point combo version, let him dash through your enemies in a line to get into a perfect position for Whirlwind and let the sparks fly. Then cast a fireball on the remaining group of enemies if there are any. Sadly, we have no action points left over here to actually cast Cursed Epidemic of Fire, but a fireball will work here as well to create a supercharged fire surface where it needs to be. On the 3rd Apotheosis turn, cast Deploy Mass Traps on the supercharged fire surface and then cast Skin Graft and Supercharger on your still living Incarnate again. Now we cast another set of Deploy Mass Traps on the double supercharged fire surface. If there are not enough enemies in the area for your sparks to make sense, you can skip casting Master of Sparks and cast Epidemic of Fire and Fireball instead of Whirlwind, Ball Rush and Fireball. If any other players have their turn before the Incarnate dies, they can take advantage of the double supercharged fire surface and throw their own Deploy Mass Traps onto the fire surface. This will not work if the Incarnate died already or this fire surface were overwritten by an enemy surface owner. This is the most damaging combo in your arsenal, but there is a high chance it will not work since enemies will regularly either way get out of the supercharged fire surface area, or your incarnate will already be killed or an enemy has overridden the surface. If you are willing to have a little bit lower damage output, but without the risk, you can go for the Fire Snail into Deploy Mass Traps into Master of Sparks combo. This is basically the quick shot version of the Incarnate Mass Fire Trap combo. Using the Incarnate here is a little bit unreliable because of the delay between creating the fire surface and the actual nuking, stretching the combo over the span of 2 turns, so in many cases it's better to condense this combination into one single turn and trade off the higher damage for a more reliable outcome. The Fire Snail is the only other pet which has points in Pyromancy and has the benefit of costing only 1 action point to summon. This allows us to execute our entire move before any enemy is able to react. On your second Apotheosis turn, stand in fire for elemental affinity and cast Mass Deploy Fire Traps and the normal Fire Trap, then Skin Graft and then the traps again, followed by Fire Snail and Supercharger, Haste and Master of Sparks. Then use the laser beam from the snail on the traps to blow them all up. And after that, dash through the remaining enemies. Don't dash before you use the laser beam. Blowing the traps up this way will not trigger the Pyromancy bonus. This costs 12 action points, so you will need to use Adrenaline before and after Skin Graft, and be an elf and use Flash Sacrifice 2 times or be a lone wolf. This combo will normally do over 40,000 damage to a group of enemies on level 20 with summoning 10 before the Spark Strider dash. If you can't get 12 action points in a turn, you can dismiss the 2 normal fire traps or Master of Sparks and Haste for just the traps or for reduced traps but having the sparks. This combo will not leave behind a fire surface, so other characters in the group can't detonate their traps on the supercharged surface as well. But if you manage to have the enemies standing on oil or poison, this will then create a supercharged surface. But it's normally not worth the hassle, since most fights will be over after detonating 10 supercharged fire traps. Before we end this guide, let's quickly talk about the Give Back Pet Power. Pet Power is an optional mod already integrated into the game by Larian, which gives you access to 2 more infusions to cast, which are Earth and Blood, and allows you to infuse all pets instead of only your incarnate. This concludes my guide to the awesome skill that is summoning in Original Sin 2.